to other countries.
Because you make everybody happy when you trade and get something, and both y'all get something good out of it, right?
So is it necessarily trade that's what's benefiting these people? Think about an American company goes and builds a factory in some remote village in India. All right. So what does that factory need inside of it?
Workers.
It needs workers, right? Where do those workers generally tend to come from?
Around the local area.
The local area, all right? What do those workers get for their time spent at work?
Money.
They get money. What can they then do with that money? They can pay their bills. They can spend it, right? They can revitalize their economy by spending money. So what he's saying is that by businesses chasing profits, right, and trying to, why would you move a factory from the United States to India or China? Right, your resources cost less. Which, if your resources cost less, what's that going to mean for your profit? What?
More products, which means
You're going to end up making more money, right? If you can sell, or if you can, pay your workers less and either sell the same amount or sell more for a lower price, you're going to end up making more money, right? So that businesses chasing profits and putting factories in China, in Bangladesh, in Malaysia, in Pakistan, in Honduras, or the Dominican Republic, or in Mexico is doing more good for more people than if the American government were just giving money to those countries, right? So that's one of the things one of the themes we're gonna see go throughout this unit is that globalization, even if it's done for the evils of chasing profits, right, and being self-interested, does far more good than governments just giving money away. Oh, it's up first. Let's change that. All right, I got another quote. Read it, process it, and somebody explain it. Just read that first paragraph. Somebody take a stab at what you think it means.
Specialization.
Okay. So yeah, he's talking about specialization. All right. What about specialization?
You want to try something that you don't know how to do. You just probably get somebody else to do it for and change your
Okay. Chances are that if you don't know how to do something, are you gonna be very good at it?
No.
Right? Chances are there's probably someone who has greater skills at that activity than you. Correct? All right. So if we allow people to specialize in doing certain activities, right, we can all be better off. What does it mean to be prudent?
Rich.
Smoke.
You ever heard of someone being a prude?
Prude. Old-fashioned.
Not necessarily old-fashioned.
Rude.
Thinks they're something like that.
Not necessarily.
A prude wears a skirt.
You're in the way or something? Like, you're a burden?
Okay, why do they do that?
Trying
All right. So to be prudent is to do what is best, right, for you or for those in your charge, right? So prudes are the ones that are trying they're the goodies, right? The ones that are trying to always do the good or the right thing. And they wear skirts down towards their knees, because they don't want to distract boys with, 3 inches of thigh meat or whatever. Yeah, I do know you're made of meat, right?
Yeah,
That's what's inside of you.
Whoa. I thought it was made of.
All right. So, what does it mean by master of a family?
The father.
The big guy.
Patriarchy much?
The head. The one who makes the most money.
Yeah, the head of the family doesn't have to make the most money.
I mean, my mom makes she said.
Yeah, you're decision maker, right? The pant wearer. All right. So what is a prudent master of a family?
The good
Trying to do
one.
the best.
The one that's.
It's like the head of the family is trying to do the best.
Trying to do the best thing for everybody in the family, right? And so the person who's trying to do the best thing for everybody in the family will not attempt to make stuff at home if what?
He can buy it.
If you can buy it, but more specifically, if you can buy it for what?
Less.
Yeah, if you can buy it for less than what it would take for you to make that item, yeah, go and buy it. Right? And it gives an example. The tailor does not attempt to make his own shoes. Right? Instead, where does the tailor go to get shoes? The shoemaker or the cobbler. Right? And then where does the shoemaker go to get clothes?
The tailor.
The tailor. All right? And then why doesn't the farmer do either one of those? What's the farmer busy doing? Farming, right? And then so how's the farmer going to get shoes?
Trading?
You're the shoemaker.
Yeah. He's going to either trade some of his crops for shoes or sell some of his crops and then take that money to go buy shoes. All right? Now, this second part. What does this second paragraph mean? What is prudence in the conduct of every private family can scarce be folly in that of a great kingdom. A foreign country can supply us with a commodity cheaper than we can make it. Better buy it of them with some part of the produce of our own industry. What does it mean there?
The farmer.
Second paragraph.
He can't do either one.
Not the farmer part. The second paragraph.
Be folly is that of a great kingdom. Because you trying to be good is only not going to benefit you at all. Because you have to be mean to make some money. Well, I mean, I know.
Is that what you think he's saying here, though?
Yeah. What is prudence in the conduct of every private family? Yeah, you can be good at home and you go out. Never mind.
You better tell him yourself. Talk about your Saturday activities. Okay, no. So, again, what does it mean to be prudent or to have prudence? We just talked about it.
You remember how that situation went with Ben Thompson. I can't.
All right. Prudence means doing what's best for those involved. All right. So if it is best for everyone involved in the conduct of a private family, what is a private family?
A household. Us sitting down.
Right. You and your siblings, mom, dad. Right. That's a private family. So if it's good for a private family,
it can scarce be folly in that of a great kingdom.
all right. So what is a folly?
No,
Is folly good or bad? Folly is bad. Right? Folly is like faulty. Right? So what do you think can scarce be folly?
it can rarely be folly. It can rarely be wrong.
Rarely or barely?
Rarely?
Huh?
Rarely?
So, yeah. So if it, what he's saying here is if it's good for the family,
It's good for the kingdom.
it's good for the kingdom. Right? If it's good for a family, it can't be bad for us all as a family, right? Our kingdom works exactly as a family. That is the classic view of economics, right? Man, I thought I was a bug. I was about to jump. It was one of those sticky notes. Yeah, all I just saw was this dark thing boom, coming down. And I thought it was Stranger Things. Gregor's about to be gone. So, I spent like 3 hours watching Stranger Things. I've been seeing weird stuff today. All right. So, what does it mean? If a foreign country can supply us with a commodity cheaper than we can make it, what does that mean?
If China can make them shoes cheaper than we can make them,
What should we do?
Buy them from China.
All right, and where do we get the money to buy shoes from China? Yeah, we make money off the things that we export. Does anybody know what things we do a lot of exporting of?
Peaches.
Actually, we do more right now exporting of walnuts than we do peaches. But that's okay. So yeah, we take the things that we grow here, peaches, right, and we sell them to Spain or somewhere that likes to eat peaches. Are you just pulling those things down? Are you sure? I feel like every now and then you're just reaching up there and smacking it.
What?
Alright. So, we're coming up on the part where you guys are probably going to want to start taking notes.
Don't you dare.
Harley, do you want to?
I can sell this baseball card, but I have to
Sell it?
bring it into it.
Alright. So, why do nations engage in trade? Right, that's what we just kind of what we were talking about here. Right, just like you guys found advantages in being able to trade with one another, right? Nations do the same thing. They move their resources around in order to get them in the hands of the people who value those resources the most. Because the people who value those resources the most are going to do what? They're going to be willing to do what?
Pay more.
They're going to be willing to pay more for it, right? So, nearly all international economic theories center around the idea that trade creates wealth, right? That the benefits, what we gain from trade, are far greater than what we have to give up, right? Some of y'all had a $100 gift card to a golf course, right? And yeah, some of you were never going to use that. And that you benefited more from getting rid of that and getting something else in exchange.
So you're really saying China benefits less with
So remember when we looked at GDP and we saw how relatively low China's GDP is to ours? That's because the things that they're producing are being produced at such low values that the final dollar value of them just aren't that, it's not that much. Right? But the general idea and a theme that's going to run throughout this unit is the idea that trade creates wealth. Right? We go from things we don't want to things that we do want to have and can use. Right, and then if we specialize, you guys remember specialization? What's that all about?
When you
We're good at
good at one particular.
Yeah, you get good at doing one particular thing, right? And then, so if we specialize, we get good at one thing, and then begin to trade internationally, we're actually going to increase our own productivity, right? And end up with a greater number of items than we would if we just went at it on our own. Right? So we create wealth by getting more stuff in a greater variety. When we focus on doing one thing and doing it well, and then trading, we will end up more stuff and at a greater variety. And that's what this is all about. That's why we engage in trade. So, some terms you need to know. Some of these you do already know. Some of them you may not know or may want to get more familiar with. Right? But there is specialization, right? Which is very rough definitions, doing one thing so you can do it really well. A more specific definition of specialization is dividing the labor up into specific parts so that we can increase the productivity of workers. How many of y'all, I know this is going back a little bit, but how many of y'all remember the first test we took in here?
Me.
Does anybody remember I gave you, there was one question that had a quote from Adam Smith. Somebody remember that?
Sure.
Somebody remember what that quote was about?
On the short answer?
I think this was just multiple choice.
In the long run, we're all there.
Well, yep, in the long run we are, but in the short run right now, there was a passage about the division of labor when it comes to making needles, right, for sewing. And instead of employing a couple of really good needle makers, companies that were wanting to produce needles instead broke that process down into like 40 different parts and then hired like 20 unskilled workers to come in and just do one or two things each. And now no one had to be a master at what they were doing. Instead, everyone takes just a small part in it, and eventually things get produced. Right? If you work for Ford at where they're building trucks, right? Do you have to know how to put an entire truck together by yourself to work there?
No.
No, right? How hard would it be for Ford to get employees if you had to know how to put together an entire car by yourself?
Very hard.
Right? So instead, they divide the labor up, and so your job in that factory is not building a truck, it is putting the door on a truck. You put the driver's side door on all day. Every car that comes through there, all you do, boom, put that door in its place, drop a couple bolts in there, send it down the line. All right, globalization, we already talked about that a little bit. It's that increasing the connectivity of the world and interdependence. Everybody, y'all know what interdependence is?
Depending on something else.
Yeah, is that we need each other in order to survive, right? We're not independent, we are interdependent. Because what would happen to us as consumers if Americans tried to make everything ourselves?
The quality wouldn't be good enough.
Well, it would be so.
It'll be good quality.
Yeah, I mean, it's American workers with American pride, American materials.
They're doing everything.
What costs more?
Ah, let's say, yeah, it's going to end up costing us more. So for consumers, what's that going to mean if we hire American and buy American and everything?
Then we're gonna be paying more for the stuff.
We've got to be willing to pay more for things, right? Or we can use our interdependence, let some other countries do things like make T-shirts, right, or tennis shoes, so that we can focus on other things. And then that idea of imports and exports, you guys remember those, right? Which one are items that we buy?
Imports.
Imports, right? We buy it from other countries, and then the ones we sell are exports. Good. All right, we talked about this yesterday. There are two types of absolute advantage. You have both individual absolute advantages and national absolute advantages. When we're talking individual, that is you are just better at producing something than someone else. Right? So think about a situation where there's a group of siblings, where there's like a 16-year-old and an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. Right? If the task for the day was cleaning up the yard, right? Who's going to have the absolute advantage in all of the yard stuff, like raking and cutting grass and picking up stuff, picking up sticks and whatnot? Who's going to have the absolute advantage? The older, right? But does the older sibling then do everything because they have the absolute advantage? No, right? You want to kind of figure out who can do what, right? And then same thing happens nationally. Right? There are countries that can produce more than other countries using the same or similar resources. If I can build 6 birdhouses in an hour and O'Brien can build 3 birdhouses in an hour, right, which one of us has the absolute advantage? Right? I do. Right? And when the United States can produce 12,000 airplanes in a year and Malaysia can produce 1 airplane in a year, who has the absolute advantage? Right, the United States. So, if a person or a nation has the absolute advantage in production, right, in producing especially everything, not just one thing, but in producing most things, is there a reason to specialize and trade? So if you can do everything yourself, should you do everything yourself? Right? There's still going to be a reason to specialize and trade. What we're going to look at here for a little bit is how we figure that out. Right? And the way we do that is through comparative advantage. You need to get back? This part? Not really. This is just, it's called an intro slide. It gets me ready to intro. Boom! Comparative advantage. That's our big one. All right? So a person or a nation has a comparative advantage in the production of a product when it can produce that product at a lower domestic opportunity cost. And real quick, refresh my memory, what is opportunity cost?
The next best.
Right, yeah, it's the cost of not having the next best alternative, right? So when we're talking about, say, producing tanks or buses, Right? If we produce more tanks, our opportunity cost is going to be what? Yeah, we're going to have to give up buses.
That thing's only gonna see like 4 people. Legendary death.
Alright. So, comparative advantage is the basis, or it's the reason that we engage in trade, whether it's between you and a friend, right, like we did earlier, or it's between regions of the same country, right, or states within the same country, or nations in general, right? Comparative advantage is why we do that, right? Why, any of you guys eat oranges, right, or drink orange juice?
Yeah, I love
Okay, how do we as Georgians get to eat oranges and drink orange juice if we don't produce that many oranges? We don't have the climate. What do we got to do?
Trade with Florida.
Right? We got to get them from other states that do produce them, such as Florida and California. And instead, what fruits might we trade to Florida or California?
Peaches.
Peaches, right? So you'll specialize in the production of the one you have the lower opportunity cost for. Right? What can you do cheaper? And then trade to obtain the things that cost you a little bit more to do yourself.
Why can we make peaches?
They have too many earthquakes.
So think about this. Imagine you have a friend, and your friend works in your favorite store, right? Whether that's Albertson Pharmacy or Save a Lot, or
She works there.
right? And let's say that friend also has, and they really don't do this much anymore, but they used to have this thing called employee discounts.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, the reason they don't have these anymore is because of this idea right here, comparative advantage. Because if you have a friend who works at a store and they can get clothes that you like for, say, 30% off.
You need to tell me there's no more employee discounts.
I'm not going to say there's no more, but it's not as common as it used to be. Right? But, so your friend gets 30% off of the clothes you like to buy.
So you give your friend the money and he wants.
Right? So maybe instead of paying, $100 for an outfit, right? You can get it. Your friend can buy that same amount of clothes for $70. What might you do for your friend going through and getting this stuff for you?
Buy it for you.
Well, you wouldn't buy it for your friend, but would you just give them $70 and pay for
Give
it?
them a little more.
You give them a little bit, right? Give them a little bit of, hey, thanks for doing this. So maybe you pay them $80, right? So they earn 10.
Get 10, get one.
You still benefited, right? Because you got the stuff you wanted at a lower cost, right? 80 is still less than 100, right? But your friend went from, they made $10 on doing almost absolutely nothing, right? So everybody benefits. That's kind of that idea of comparative advantage. You look to see who can do things cheaper than you can do them. And if they can do it for cheaper, and can sell it to you for less than you can do it yourself, trade it. All right, and so our gains from trade are based on that idea of comparative advantage, not absolute advantage. Make sure you guys understand that. It seems simple, but a lot of times we seem confused. Right? When we specialize and trade, like I told you guys earlier, right, we increase our productivity. So we end up with more stuff, right? We increase the nation's output, and because we have this more stuff, and we have more stuff, what happens to prices? They go a little bit lower, so we're able to increase our standard of living as well. So by specializing in just a few items and trading for the other items that we don't specialize in, we end up with more stuff at lower cost. Right, and then that's just, that's another way of saying the same thing. Everyone benefits when we trade because you'll end up with a greater quantity, right, but also greater variety.
Oh.
So think about from round 1 to round 2, did our resources change any?
No.
No, right? We had the exact same 17 items out there for round 1 and round 2, but just getting them in the hands of people who valued them more increased their value, right? And then when we started opening up trade with those larger partners, that's where we really start seeing our satisfaction increase, because now we have that greater variety. Okay, so got a chart up here. All right, this chart tells us, right, that myself and Miss Thompson can do two things, right? We can either bake cakes or we can either make pizzas, right? And if we each spend an hour working, right, Miss Thompson can bake 2 cakes in an hour, or in that same hour, she can make 6 pizzas. Right? Myself, I can make 4 cakes in an hour or 8 pizzas. Right? So, who has the absolute advantage in cakes?
You.
Right? 4 cakes is more than 2 cakes, so I have the absolute advantage. Who has the absolute advantage in pizzas?
Miss Thompson.
Right? I do. So should I trade? I can produce more than Miss Thompson in both those categories. Is there any situation in which I should trade?
No. Unless you just want to trade, just to be nice.
Oh, thanks. You used it all.
What was that? Are you dying?
Don't worry. I'll bill you guys later.
Okay. Do you have any more things?
That's it. Okay. So, how do we know who should specialize in doing what?
I don't know.
Yeah.
She's special.
Why that? Why you think that?
Y'all, she's only producing 2 less than you all.
Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look. All right. So I should specialize in trade if I have a comparative advantage in production. All right. And so what we're going to do, right, there are two methods when it comes to, if you go back to your reading that you were supposed to do last night, two methods for calculating opportunity costs. What are they?
When you put the
Nope. What's that, Sergio?
Input method.
Yeah, output and input method. Yes, if you haven't already, do definitely turn that in. All right. So we have an output method and an input method. Right? When we're talking about what do we mean by output? Right? So if the thing we're looking at is how many finished products you can produce in a certain amount of time or with a certain amount of resources, then we're looking at an output problem. If it's an input problem, we're looking at how many resources it takes to produce one or some set number of items, right? So if we're talking about cakes per hour and pizzas per hour, is that input or is that output?
Output.
That's output, right? Because we're talking about how many cakes can we produce in one given hour, right? So whenever we deal with an output problem, the way to remember how to do this is output, the other number goes over, right? Output, other, over. So what we do if we want to find the opportunity cost of baking cakes, right, then it's 2 cakes, right? 2 cakes, and the other number goes over. So what number goes over?
6.
6, right? The pizzas that she's not making in that time, right? So the opportunity cost of cakes equals 6 over 2, which that reduces down to what?
3.
Right? So for Miss Thompson, baking 1 cake means she lost the opportunity to make
3 pieces.
3 pizzas.
Okay.
Right? And then for me, when I make 4 cakes, right? And the other number goes over. We've got 8 over 4, and that reduces down to 2, right? So, who pays a lower cost for cakes?
I think Mr. Gordon.
Right? Because I only lose out on
making
producing
2
2 pizzas, right? Where Miss Thompson is not making 3 pizzas for any cake that she makes. Right? And then to find out the other one. Okay, what's up?
How do you know it's output? I'm sorry.
So output is whether or not the numbers in question deal with finished products per resource put in, or is it the number of resources you have to put in to get a certain number of finished products? So is it the thing that comes out or something that goes in?
Okay.
Right? So in this one, it's how many cakes come out in 1 hour.
Okay.
So that's an output question. Right? And so I found that 1 cake for Miss Thompson equals 3 pizzas. 1 cake for me equals 2 pizzas. So I pay a lower cost per pizza, right? She buys pizzas for $3 where I buy them for $2. It's kind of how you think about that. Or I mean, she buys cakes for $3, where I buy cakes for $2, right? And then to find the other item, very simple way to do it. You can go that same output, other number goes over, or who knows what the math relationship?
Inverse. Oh.
Not an inverse. What's the R? It's a
Reciprocal.
reciprocal, right? And so for Ms. Thompson, one pizza equals 1/3 of a cake. So every time she makes a pizza, she's not making 1/3 of a cake. Whereas myself, when I make a pizza, I'm missing out on half of a cake. So who pays a lower cost for producing pizza?
You. Uh-oh.
Do you know your relationship with fractions?
No.
All right. So yes, Ms. Thompson pays a lower cost for producing pizzas. Because would you rather pay 33 cents for a pizza or 50 cents for a pizza?
33 cents.
Right? So, in this situation, who should do what?
I think you should bake the cakes,
Right?
and she should make the pizza.
Right? Because I have a lower opportunity cost in cakes. I should specialize in cakes. Right? So that every hour I'm producing 4 cakes. Ms. Thompson focuses on pizzas. Every hour she's making 6 pizzas. And then we get to the end of the day and we both have piles of cake and pizzas. What do we then do?
Sell them.
Right? Sell them or trade them with each other. Because I don't know if you've ever tried to eat an entire cake before, but when you move on to the second cake, do you really want cake anymore?
No.
No. What might you rather have?
A pizza.
Pizza. Right? All right.
Yeah, we have.
We'll cut it right there.
It's a cake.
Boom! Right on.